So let me ask you at this moment if any of the other panelists would like to add anything to this question or any of the other questions they didn't have an opportunity to answer before I open it up to the audience.
I just wanted to say one thing about, again, I think we have to, you know, in looking at that question of stick-to-itiveness and will and focus, recognize something else. It's not only a decade or two-decade issue. You know, the reason I think why young people going into the field tend to leave, I mean, there are probably several reasons. One is it's harder than they think. I mean, it's hard. Teaching is hard work, and people don't always realize what that is and what it's going to take from them and what it's going to involve before they do it. So I think that, you know, we're always going to see, and I think in most labor-intensive fields anyway, this is always an issue, something that you're going to continuously have to deal with. It's not a problem to be solved, it's a condition of the field. That being said, when young people go into the field, I think something comes out of this research that is you know, different than in some ways the graying folks. And that is the level of support that they need in the early years. In those first 2 to 3 years, you really need a massive investment of support in order to sustain a great many people. There are those handful of people who are remarkable naturals and get it all intuitively, but that's a very small number of people. I mean, teaching is learning, as I talked about before. And there's learning that still has to go on in those first years. So what Saul is saying is absolutely true. A community needs to figure out a way to make itself extremely attractive to younger people and to younger people in coming into the field. That's why I talked about New York City Teaching Fellows. It's not just for older folks. It makes it sound cool. It makes it sound countercultural. It makes it sound like something where you can have a huge difference. But once they get in, I think there's a huge responsibility and a necessary one. And again, I would agree with Saul. It's not just the schools alone that can do that in most cases. They don't have the kinds of resources that are necessary to do that. It will take a community to do it. It has to do with the benefits and the salaries and that kind of thing to some extent. And as much as it's not overplayed, there's another thing to think about here. I don't know if many of you are familiar with this, but there's this notion of what happens to young people when they go into a field like this in relation to their friends who go into other fields. And how over the course of a few years they can't socialize in some ways and do things with their friends. Because their friends start going on vacations and doing things if they've gone into other kinds of fields that make it very difficult. It's something that our community needs to take seriously and think hard about. What are the ways that we can create other kinds of incentives? I mean, I don't think we can start paying teachers, you know, $150,000 out of school. But I do think that there are ways in which you can create, you know, we've talked about passports to Jewish life for individuals. I think there are ways in which we can create opportunities for teachers to be able to take advantage at least of the things that exist in the Jewish community. And again, we can do that if we work together to think about how to do that. And that includes the federations and the BJEs and the foundations and the institutions themselves throughout the community saying, okay, when teachers come into the field, we will provide this incredible set of incentives. So it's just something.
Chip. Again, going to the matter of context, broadly contextualized, being a 20-something or a 50-something is different than it was a generation ago. Dramatically different. And it's empirically demonstrated now. Think of the number of 20-year-olds in this country who are living at home. The so-called Odyssey years. Think of the phenomena of birthright relative to the 20-somethings. Think of the 50-somethings who are beginning a second or third career. Think of what you've read about the number of careers, not jobs, careers that our children will have. I'm a 58-year-old father of 3 20-somethings. I'm going to come back as one of my children, I hope. Their 20-something is very different than ours. So imagine a situation where the profession was truly professionalized, where a career was 12 years and not 20 years, where salaries were front-loaded so educators got more money when they came in, had fewer steps to the top of the schedule, if indeed a schedule exists, and had a direct path to a mentorship and some ongoing enriching professional development work for which they were compensated. And the environment in which they interacted was hospitable in the ways that Len described it, so that 12 years was envisioned, hypothetically, as a very successful career. Notice in the study, class size was never mentioned as a problem. Class size is not a problem in most Jewish schools. If you differentiated teaching and allowed for bringing specialized talent, you might have larger classes, God forbid, but in a way that would enable you to customize and individualize education that currently doesn't happen. Go to the principal's concern about multiple forms of intelligent learning styles and so on. The responses that we can develop as foundations, we're in the philanthropic effectiveness business. We're not in the grant-making business. So the interest is longer-term, systemic responses, ways that make reasonable, in many cases even measurable differences in the learning of Jewish youth, in ennobling the profession in the process, and ultimately, which I think is our big risk, in elevating the status of the Jewish educator. Because I believe if we don't do it, at least from the Jim Joseph Foundation, over long periods of time, Jim Alva Shalom set the foundation to exist in perpetuity, we won't be nearly as successful as he would have wanted us to be.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just one brief thing that may have gotten left out, but it's very clearly in the report, and that is this is a report of both teachers and administrators as well. So I think a lot of Bob's comments, you know, that there are different responses and different strategies to deal with people who are in their 20s coming into, let's say, an entry-level position in teaching versus someone who may be in their mid-30s or 40s or career change, where what may be the target position is something that is a middle management leadership position, administrative position. The study has both of those data sets, and so the conclusions may be different, and the projects that may get tried and the things that need to be studied are going to vary depending on where people are at in the career and what we're targeting.